Hi, and welcome to another LRCC Soundbite. Over the last couple of weeks, I've talked about this man called David, what he was like when he was a little boy, and then what he was like as he grew up, knowing that one day he was going to be king of Israel. This week, I'm going to think about David the king. He was about 30 when he became the king, and he would rule for about 40 years. He would be known as a strong king, leading a country that was not to be messed with. Now, David had one thing that he hung on to through his whole life, especially as king. It was something that helped him decide what to do, when to do it. It was something that anchored him and therefore gave something firm for the whole nation to build on. It was his faith in God. When he became king, he would ask God what he wanted him to do and then follow what was asked of him. There were times when he would have an idea, take it to God and ask for his blessing before doing it. One that always sticks in my mind is about building a temple. See, ever since the days of Moses, hundreds and hundreds of years before, God's place of worship was effectively a tent. Yeah, it was a bit special. It wasn't just a little four-man from Go Outdoors, but it was a tent nonetheless. Now, David loved God and felt this wasn't right, especially since he was living in a palace. David wanted to build a temple to God, a permanent place where all the people could come bring their sacrifices, learn about who God was, worship him. So he took this plan to God and was somewhat surprised by the answer that God gave him. God said, "No, you're not the one who will build a temple for me. Please don't do it. Stick with the tent." David was surprised, but he did as he was asked. I don't know if you listened a few weeks ago when I was talking about the previous king. His name was Saul. His attitude was so in contrast with this. He didn't listen to God. He just went on and did what he wanted to with the excuse that he was thinking he was doing the best for God. In the end, it was this lack of following God's instructions that cost him his position as king. And this is where David was different. When David was chosen to be the next king by God, God had said that he wasn't looking at the outside physical attributes of the person. He was looking inside at the person's heart, and David had a good heart. And here we see that playing out. David loved God and wanted to do the right things. He didn't always get it right. In fact, sometimes he got it spectacularly wrong. A prophet at the time came and told him a story one day. It went along these lines, that once there were two men, one rich, one poor. The rich man had many, many sheep and cattle, but the poor man had only one small lamb that he'd raised. It even lived with his family, shared his food and slept with him. It was like a daughter to him. One day a traveller visited the rich man, and as was the custom, the rich man prepared a meal for him. But rather than use one of his own animals, he took the lamb from the poor man. When David heard this story, he was very angry, and I think I would agree. What a horrible thing to do. But the prophet turned to David and said, "This story is about you. You've deliberately done something like this to one of your people." Now, I don't have time to tell you the whole story here, but if you do want to hear it, just get in touch and I can help you find it. If you have a Bible, it's in 2 Samuel chapters 11 and 12. If you don't have one and live close to us, do let us know and we'll drop a copy round to you. David didn't argue. He didn't even have to wonder what he'd done. He knew immediately what he'd done. And he would go and he would ask God's forgiveness and did everything he could to try and make it right again. There were consequences, but God did forgive him. You know, I think of stories like this as a reminder that none of us are perfect. And we can all find ourselves caught up in a situation of our own making where we've made some really bad decisions. Remember, God is still always there, even in those times. And ultimately, there's nothing that is too bad that he won't forgive us if we truly ask. I know that's not always easy to accept, but that's my experience, and it's a fundamental of my Christian faith. As I always say, I would be more than happy to tell you more about that or tell you more of that story. Just get in touch. I hope you have a great week. God bless you.